Hello, it's August 30th, 2016. I'm Tony Smario. Welcome to World War III this week here on BroSal.org YouTube channel. And we're just a few days away now from the G20 summit in China. I don't know if I'm the only one that finds it extremely interesting that all these great economic powers can meet every year, even in the face of usually the populations when they hold them in our countries like Canada, America, Australia. The people get in the street and revolt, or at least try and make themselves seen to show all these people that, hey, we're not happy with the way that your economic policies are going. And yet every year these 20 countries meet supposedly to, help the economy along. Of course, this year it's no different. I find something interesting, as we talked about the alternative media last week, that when I'm searching this issue, G20 summit, what I get is a lot of CCTV coverage of it, right? I don't get your conspiracy theorists attaching much G20 summit. At least it doesn't come up when you search that stuff. Interesting. The only time you get that subject matter addressed is by that certain group of conspiracy theory alt media sites who, now that I've been studying it for years, all seem to be saying the same thing year in and year out, which is be scared now, the economy's going to crash now, we're going to war tomorrow, everything's blowing up tomorrow. The earth's burning up, the climate's changing, all the food's going to kill us, the diseases are going to kill us, and it's all going to happen tomorrow. And that's been going on for years now through the alternative media. And of course the Illuminati's behind it, the Pope is behind it, Obama's behind it. They know everything, just like the government knew Al-Qaeda was behind 9/11. We went and got them. So it's all a little convenient to me. But anyway, this G20, I just wanted to point out what I found in the reporting of it to be a little bit confusing to me. Now, of course, these are the 20 top economies in the world. What's interesting about it is within this top 20 economies does not include, for instance, Iran. Mexico's included, but Iran's not. Not sure why. All the oil that they produce. Saudi Arabia is included, but not Iran. So anyway, it's all kind of a big laugh, but of the 20 that are included, all 5 of the nations we call the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, BRICS, they're all part of the G20. Now, if you remember the hype from a year or so ago, the last couple of years, but certainly about a year ago, BRICS was going to be the current downfall of the American economy, right? Our monetary system was going to crash. BRICS was coming together. They're going to form their own monetary system. And that's what the world war is going to be about. I mean, I remember watching all this stuff on all these alt media stations, bringing us the down and dirty truth, right? And what's so interesting is I just watched a news program where the foreign minister of China was meeting the prime minister of India, talking about how they're going to work together on both the G20 summit and BRICS. And what's interesting is in the G20 summit, the way it's coming out of China, one of the leaders of the BRICS movement, is that the whole goal of this G20 summit is around such things, I'm quoting their propaganda, global economic recovery. We talk about a lot as if the economists don't know how to make each of these economies recover. Funny that they speak of it as a global economic recovery, as if the same thing needed in America, which is investment in our infrastructure, investment in our small businesses like they used to be, banks that are willing to speculate on the average American that wants to start a business or start manufacturing something or create a service, get into the service industry, along with national programs to bring our, whatever it is, our communications, our transportation, our technologies up to snuff with everybody else's, even if they're just things like construction technologies. You look at the stuff Japan uses and even China. They're way ahead of us, robotics and things like that. China's been building these smart buildings, smart cities, and there's all sorts of answers for how to rebuild America's economy. But is that the same thing that Indonesia needs? Is that the same thing India needs? Is that the same thing China and Brazil need? Is that the same thing Australia and South Africa need? Is that the same thing Argentina and Saudi Arabia need? Everybody needs the same global economic plan, right? And yet they speak of an interconnected and inclusive world economy. They speak of improving the global economic and financial governance, which to me, it all paints this picture like we're all supposed to be one big interconnected economy. What's happening in South Africa should be on some parity, on some, not even a parity, but that the same governance should be going on in America or Mexico or Australia or Indonesia or Saudi Arabia. I don't get that. How could all the answers be handled by a global economic and financial governance? What would a global group have to say about the variables going on within each country? Except that when you look at it, of course, when you look at the world as one big pie to divide up from an international monetary fund, well, that's exactly what you want. How do we use the resources of Africa and the resources of America and the resources of Saudi Arabia and the resources of Argentina to some global benefit? Well, who's deciding on what the global benefit is of running agriculture into the ground of the small farmer, for instance, in America? Everywhere. I mean, it's the pattern that's happened everywhere. Introducing, GMO crop in all these places and all these things that suit a global management structure, but have no traction in any of the communities, in any of the nationalities, in any of the places that they want to, and that they have been, of course, installing this global structure. So it's interesting to me that this G20 meeting is getting together as the 20 largest economies of the world to discuss the global economic recovery, the interconnected and inclusive world economy, improve global economic and financial governments, overcome structural and institutional reform. Not sure what that means. Overcome structural and institutional reform. Structural meaning like a nation having certain laws against stealing their resources, and institutional, such as community leverages that keep the multinational from devouring everything on a national and community level. I mean, that's what seems to have gone on, and that's what it seems to say. And what's funny to me is it's all going on while some of the chief economies within that global structure, we've been hearing for the last couple of years, are seeking to set up their own global economy in opposition to the fiat money of the International World Monetary Fund. I mean, how could they be talking about one without the other? And I couldn't find any mention of BRICS except in this article where China and India have already gotten together before the G20 to talk about how they're going to agree on how to move forward in the G20. What is that? I mean, does that sound like the Bloods and the Crips are going to get together to talk about how not to fight about certain issues and then go back to their own meetings where they talk about how to kill the other one? I mean, does this make any sense? If BRICS is really setting up against the Western Federal Reserve, European Union-backed financial system, if that's the big schism that we were told it was through the alternative media, then how can it be these people are sitting down with these grand ideas of an interconnected, inclusive world economy, if what they've been planning for the last couple of years is to divide that with their own system, and that's not the first thing on the list of how they're going to have a divided system, or they're just not talking about that. I mean, I'm just trying to show what a wag the dog. It's all unbelievable. It's all BS. It's all talking trash. These people all work for the same people ultimately. They're there to discuss things they're not telling us about. Because what seems to be underlying these G20 is what they've promoted on the other side is this disintegration of the global economy. The rise of alternatives. They give us bricks through one part of the alternative media. They give us this push toward a universal global electronic currency. And yet neither of those subjects seems to be being brought up about this wonderful unifying of the global economy that all these people are there to seek. How can that be? Are they going to turn it all into one unified electronic currency? How come we're not hearing about that? And if that's the case, what's all the talk about BRICS? What are the BRICS meeting to do? So anyway, I find all this quite a scandal in the sense of the people just being told more stories through the media and none of it really having much bearing on our life. I mean, it does, of course, but not the way it's reported. G20's meeting as if they're meeting to make a better economy for us, the people. Does anybody think that's what's coming? I got some stuff to talk about this week in the trending program that we're doing, so I hope people will pay attention to that. I think there's some good stuff to go over with regard to what's really going on in the world. Agenda 21, the economic collapse. I think this is going to be top on our list this week. But right now, with our World War III this week, I just want to point out that I see this G20 meeting as part of what's building toward the division toward World War III, because we do have this underlying BRICS, and nobody's scrubbing BRICS. They're getting together in India shortly to discuss BRICS. So I say that all of this is the seeds that I've been trying to point out. The time is not yet. The seeds are being planted for the divisions and where the lines will be drawn, which countries will fall onto which side, and a lot of that may be based on economics, right? Japan and Germany don't have their own oil. They have to fight for the oil. They were put in that position as part of World War I's predetermined concept. Who would be, what the oil was all about, who would have it, who would need it. Okay? Japan don't have any oil. Germany don't have any oil. So, in case you haven't seen what it means if suddenly your economy didn't have oil, it's famine and pestilence and death and the destruction of your society in the modern day. So you have to fight for it. So I say you have to look at history as these lines being divided up. If Albert Pike's prediction is anything to go on, they've known where the lines. Fascism had to be destroyed, but it had to be used to scare the crap out of the Jews to get them back to Palestine. That was all being done on purpose. Those Orthodox Christians in Russia and Greece and Turkey, all through this, had to be destroyed. You couldn't get back Palestine. You couldn't take over the world. You couldn't have a war to pit two sides of parity against each other if you left the Orthodox Christians ruling Russia and Turkey, Greece, and that whole part of Eastern Europe. So what do you have? Bolshevik Revolution, funded by the same people that took over America right about the same time, and like working the candle from two ends. And we're getting close to the center on that now, you guys. And so I'm just trying to present these things in that light. G20 summit, just a way in which the economic division is going to play out. And those details, I imagine, is what's actually being discussed, even if the people there don't know it. They're fighting for their economic lives. That's what they know. And what's coming down from the top, meaning the world banks, the people that have all the chips, the real Illuminati that work behind the scenes, that I call them the castles. We never see any footage out of the castles, do you? You never hear about how often, who comes over to those castles, who meets in all those castles. Wouldn't you be doing your real secret meetings with your real friends that you really trust in your castle? Would you be jumping on planes to fly to some hotel somewhere to be bothered by paparazzi like the Bilderbergers and the Trilaterals and those people do? Can't you see that they're lower down on the level of whoever they're speaking for? That whoever they're speaking for, I call them the castles, they must meet in the castle with their friends. And when I say the castle, I mean that crowd, whether it's on the golf course or at the resort or in the castle. They don't have paparazzi bothering them. We don't look at them and ask, what are they saying to each other today? We only look at their underlings, the Trilateral Commission, the CFR, the Bilderberg Group, and we see, what are they doing? The Ford Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation. What have they been doing for 100 years? Intrigue, political assassination, psychological warfare, vaccinations, owning the education system, owning the political system, owning the medical system. That's what they've been doing. What are they discussing in their castles? Well, we can only guess, but we can see what they've been doing. So yeah, this G20 is a bunch of their really lowered in, not even mostly CFR members. It's a bunch of the prostitutes that wear suits and ties and have to fly around the world and be shot at, be questioned by moronic reporters and shot at by any lunatic that might make them responsible for their ills, right? So politicians and these people are nothing but prostitutes, and they know it. So anyway, G20 prostitution meeting to point us toward World War III in the economic realm. Now, in the physical realm of resources and such, we got a lot going on with the South China Sea, of course. And I've been saying since the very first, when this popped up as, China's doing this. And I said, it's interesting how all of a sudden China's we don't hear much about the technological warfare of the, hacking us anymore. But that was made a big deal out of a couple of years ago. They're hacking us, right? Now they're building all these military facilities in the South China Sea and threatening the whole world. Yeah, why wouldn't they be? I mean, why not? They were one of the largest economies. They are one of the largest economies in the world. Supposedly their stock market was doing great a few years ago. Supposedly they're solid because they hold all of America's paper. So as long as America stays strong, China stays relatively strong. So yeah, what do they want to do? Well, let's piss off America naturally. Let's start hacking their computer. Let's start a brick system. Let's threaten to undercut their economy. And yeah, let's start threatening them militarily, naturally. All without any pretext. No buildup in some form of political stage that we can see, that all the people can go, yeah, well, shit, China's been talking about that for 10 years. China, the world's been trying to avoid this kind of conflict for many years. No talk like that, like it's something where everybody's been aware of the situation, and now it's just finally getting to where we all accept that there's nothing left to do but send military weapons. No, that's just the first thing everybody does. First, China, they're building. Yeah, they're not talking to anybody. They're just down there building provocative, right? Putting their money and their future behind something entirely provocative, like I've been saying about ISIS. Sure, what's their move? Like Al-Qaeda in 2001. Sure, what's the best move? Blow up the Twin Towers. That way there's nothing America can do but come and utterly destroy them. And since they're so strategic, did they have another move in place? Nah. Just to go be utterly destroyed, their leader go hide in a cave somewhere for 10 years until we could kill him. But not another peep out of them. Oh, that was a fantastic strategy. Really did a lot to bring their caliphate together, didn't it? Just like this ISIS, right? These geniuses. All they want to do is kill innocent people. I mean, is that what we really imagine their deepest theocratic vision is for themselves and their governance? To chop the heads off everybody that won't side with them? Well, you see what that's done. Even the Sunni Muslims don't want anything to do with them. Even the supposed people that they're trying to set the kingdom up for don't want to be in their kingdom. So that's how pathetic that is. So anyway, South China Sea, more escalation. You're going to see more escalation, and I mention it because, of course, it's in the news a lot. And I think, again, it's wars and rumors of wars. Nothing's going to happen immediately except escalating events. You may hear of an event, and it may or may not be real, right? The sinking of the military ship in the Gulf of Tonkin, right? The Gulf of Tonkin event. We got to go attack Vietnam. We were trying to be nice. We were trying to negotiate, but darn it, they attacked us. That's how it always goes, you guys. So South China Sea, I say, is just another hot point that they can provoke by whether it's real or not. It doesn't need to be. Some of these pictures they show me, these islands. I mean, I'm a surfer. I've been looking at aerial pictures of atolls and islands for a very long time. And some of these pictures, I promise you, are of places that nobody's building any military bases. They look like a piece of coral that's 3 feet off the water and a couple 100 yards wide. Any typhoon could wash right on over it. And since China knows we can make typhoons and tidal waves, I really think a lot of it is utter BS. Some of the pictures I've seen, I promise you, that they show while they're giving you some video clip of China building military bases in the South China Sea. Not on that piece of land, they're not. I guarantee you. You're not showing me a picture of an island where they're building something. You're showing me just a picture of an atoll with a bunch of ships in there that could be doing anything, excavating coral. They could be getting sand. They could be looking for pearls. They could be doing any number of things. But they're not building a military base on that tiny little swath of coral reef in the middle of the ocean. So, at least not when that picture was taken. If they're going to build that coral up, okay. But they're not doing anything with that today. So, I say I've already seen a lot of the misleading way that they're presenting it in this South China Sea conflict. And yet, it just keeps staying hot in the news. And what I find intriguing is it's bringing in the other players around there, Japan, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, right? It's bringing these other people in who I think from the standpoint of a depopulation agenda, we're happy to destroy those people. We're happy to present the escalation of war by the fact that, the Philippines got mad and shot a missile at China and China retaliated. That's why I think North Korea is being used to push the button in China, and China knows it. Americans don't really care about killing Vietnamese, Koreans, Taiwanese. These aren't really real people. They're not white Christian people. They're not white people. So they're not really real people in our eugenic society. They're kind of, half to three-quarter people. They're almost real, but not quite real. If they kill each other, it's not such a big deal. But man, if a German, Italian, if something happens in Spain, hey, that's a little, if British people are blown up, that's a little too close to home. But over in Turkey, Iran, Iraq, these aren't even real. They speak some weird language. They're weird people. They're not real. So it's okay if they kill you. And Chinese, those slanty-eyed people are even less real than the Europeans. So let them, I think that's why the buttons are being pushed over there, because I think it's the first place we're going to see, the accusation of bombs dropping and people killing each other. I think it's going to be in the Far East. That's just my guess at this point. And then the fall of ISIS is what's been coming on for a while now, and I've been pointing that out. Even from the beginning, I pointed out that the rhetoric at the time, if anyone will go back and listen to it a year ago, was that ISIS is going to spread all over. Oh my God, what are we all going to do? Because ISIS is going to spread. They're going to take over all these states. The Arab Spring is going to be like an Arab Spring in reverse, like an Arab nightmare. And I said, no, it's not, because it's not real. It's like Obama, hope and change. It's just a slogan. It's not real. They're not real. And they're just a mercenary army. And so they're not going to take over anything, because you can't fake that reality. You can't make it look like the people are behind them, that they run the government. Okay, I've been saying that for over a year now, and look at it. All this time, have they been able to, all this oil sales, all these, they're taxing the people. I remember when we read that ridiculous article months ago. Where do you see any evidence of that? All you ever get from these people is how they're building bombs and killing people, cutting people's heads off and threatening everybody. Not even the Sunni Arabs in the cities they take over want anything to do with them. Who are they governing? How are they governing? What schools? Who's sending their children to the schools of these people? What movement has it turned into? Look at Martin Luther King and who followed him, right? Look at the people, even though they were being beaten, they were following him by the millions. Show me when this ISIS has gotten those people behind them that they are any kind of threat to anyone in the world, and instead this hoax, this mercenary army, this wag the dog television show cartoon, suddenly the whole world, hundreds of millions of people are afraid of a cartoon because it's on TV. They haven't shown you one picture of a significant group of ISIS anything. Not governors, not military, nothing, not even farmers that are with ISIS. Look what happened in all the revolutionary wars like Mexico. The people get their pitchforks and they start marching by the hundreds of thousands, town by town. That's a movement that you can't easily stop. When has ISIS even shown a hint of that? When have they looked like they were ever anything but a well-funded mercenary bunch of killers? When have they looked like they threatened to be an actual government of the people over there, that they've stood for Islam or anyone except the CIA? I mean, they look just like the CIA and the secret ops that we've been pulling for 60 years in our country. They look exactly like the private mercenary armies that we already hire. In fact, if you do your study, there was a private mercenary army called ISIS, ISIS, that changed their name recently to SSI or something like that, I think. ISS, I forget. It came across my study the last couple of weeks. And I thought, oh, isn't that it, ISIS? You know, it's like, how blatant is that? They already are a mercenary army for hire. You know, one of these people that the government can hire to do the things that they have to put on the books. So, and steal the money, as we lose another how many billions and trillions or whatever that the Pentagon just loses, and the people, you know, they just tell us, yeah, sorry. And the people, yeah, okay. So that's why we're in the end times, if anyone wants to know. So the fall of ISIS has been easily projected from the very beginning of ISIS, when it served its meaning, when it served its purpose. And I projected back then that its purpose would be to scare the hell out of everybody, get everybody to believe that this worldwide terrorism was on, the boogeyman was on everybody's doorstep. And I projected that what it would do would have to become these independent terror cells that were ready to blow everybody up everywhere, but not there in the Middle East. They couldn't keep that going forever, because there is nobody. They aren't a movement. Nobody's with pitchforks getting behind these guys. So there is no fear of ISIS, and there never has been. And in one of these articles this week, it mentions, well, I'm going to go through them real quick now for everybody, the ones that I just grabbed in my usual manner to read, just to keep my finger on the pulse of what the brainwashing is trying to put in my brain. First one here from August 29th. Released tape rekindles memory of 88 Iran mass execution. So The family of one of these Ayatollahs that lost to Khomeini and has been sort of a spokesperson for the opposition all along, who died not long ago. His family put out an old tape of him in which he proclaimed that the recording has Grand Ayatollah Hossein Ali Montazeri condemning Iran's execution of thousands of prisoners at the end of the country's bloody war with Iraq in 1988. He warns those gathered they've committed, quote, the biggest crime in the history of the Islamic Republic, while criticizing them for misleading the country's then ailing supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. So anyway, they've released this tape of this once opposition Ayatollah condemning this execution that the government went on, and they're using this article to point out that essentially, that's what we can expect coming again. That, of course, is what Iran is about. International rights group estimated that as many as 5,000 people were executed, while the MEK puts the number at 30,000. And all of this, of course, had to do with fighting Hussein from 1980 or 81, who we were funding. So all of this just reeks of the International Monetary Fund, the dark powers pitting these two people against each other to cull the herd of the real fundamentalist Muslims that believed in God at the time, and start dividing these people, start getting them militarized, start getting them at each other's throats, preparing for the World War III that they knew was coming, apparently. So anyway, that's that we've got, constantly villainizing Iran these days, villainizing Iran. And also, of course, North Korea, because I say that North Korea is one of the hot spots where we want to be able to push a button and start killing people, or show the world how close we are to World War III. As I say, I don't think we mind killing a bunch of Koreans, Chinese, Vietnamese, Taiwanese, Filipinos. I think they're all the same to us when it comes to our eugenic leaders. And that's why in our American public, I think it's very, we don't put flags behind our Facebook sites when these people are getting killed like crazy. Whether it's Iran, Iraq, the genocides that have been going on there with American weapons, Syria, Palestine, the absolute, not only oppression, but the murder, the cruelty, the weaponry, the stuff we're doing to those people, Yemen, the Yemenis through the weapons we send to Saudi Arabia. None of that moves Americans. We don't put little flags on our Facebook site for them, but in France, if they pull a friggin' hoax, everybody. And so all of that's part of the brainwashing, you guys. And if you don't see the world yet that way, then that's still what I'm here for, as far as I'm concerned. Anybody can read these news articles and pretend that they mean what the media, whether mainstream or alternative, is trying to promote. I say they're all misleading you. Yes, I say there's very few voices like mine. There, of course, are some, but we're mostly invisible. And many of them are misled. We get led, including myself, onto these issues through these misleading misinformation sites. All my life, from the time I first got interested in this, I realized it's all been disinformation. And it's only after all that I'm able to start asking some of the questions and trying to raise the curtain in the areas where I think it's important, and share the grander perspective that I think helps put these things into perspective, like this silly article out of Bloomberg, August 29th. Kim has 2 officials killed by anti-aircraft gun. Right? So the leader of North Korea, and of course the pictures they always show you are just any file photo. This one's, it's just any file photo. It doesn't matter if it's connected to their story whatsoever. Just a picture of him speaking a month ago or whatever. But Apparently he's had 2 people killed with an anti-aircraft gun, because that's what kind of lone gunman maniac, right? The crazy, psychotic lone gunman despot. That's the new patsy, right? Used to be just the loner. In the 60s and 70s, you could sell the loners, fringe of society, Charlie Manson, or the patsy for the Kennedy killing. Right? You could have the lone gunman, the Sirhan. We'd believe that. We'll believe anything. So now we've got the lone gunman psychotic despot, right? In charge of a country. Of course, nobody keeps him there. His whole military, whether he brings them to ruin or not, they're just stupid robots. They follow whatever this 30-year-old leader says. All the money people that own the industry in the country, all the Chinese mafia, all the underground power in the world, nothing anybody can do. This lone gunman psychotic despot is just liable to push the button just because he's happy, because he's out of his mind one day and giddy and decides he's going to kill everybody. I mean, that's really? Don't they show us in all our Bond movies how we got a James Bond to go in there and just sort of kill that guy? Isn't that what we do? Is that what they do? We've done it all over South America and Central America and the Middle East and Eurasia. Only funny enough, we go kill the guy that's saying, hey, I want to share the stuff with the people. We need to share the stuff with the people. That's what, we usually kill that guy. But that's what we do. That's what the CIA was set up to do. Go kill all these people that don't want to go along with our plan. So that's what's really going on in the world. But, oh no, not the North Korean, not this guy. Oh no, he's a lone guy. That's the new, patsy, lone gunman, psychotic despot. Watch out. They just got their finger on the button. Putin, right? China, of course we don't speak of Xi Jinping, we speak of China. Because Xi Jinping, people don't look at him as a lone gunman, crazy despot. But China are a bunch of just weird robotic people. They're not people. They don't have philosophers. They don't think for themselves. They're just whatever. China. If China is going to war, who cares about the mafia? Who cares about the power brokers underneath China who own the stock market and who trade in their resources? What do we know from any of the Rockefellers of China? Who are they? Do we even talk about them? Do we even think they exist? No, of course not. China is just an entity. And it doesn't even matter who's in China. Presidents come and go, but China just acts as China does. They're just like a digital currency for us. We just call it China. It's just a flag. It's not even a person. But Russia, it's Putin. America it's Obama. And what will Hillary do? What will Trump do? What's Obama going to do? But China is just China. I mean, come on, you guys, how stupid. And North Korea is now associated with the lone gunman, psychotic despot who can bring the world to war. Okay, so I'm just going to run through these other headlines because I've spent all my time. Vietnam says all will lose in any South China Sea war. So he's pointing out the futility of warring in the South China Sea, even though, of course, nobody heeds that. We're all just going gung-ho. Yeah, I know, but the only reasonable thing to do is keep sending weapons, carriers, right? Escalation. Nobody can win. Yeah, we know that, but let's send more weapons anyway. Philippines sends a stark warning to China over South China Sea dispute. Of course, because, escalation. Philippines warning them. Vietnam's warning them. Everybody's warning them. In this article, it showed a graphic that showed the way the islands are under dispute. And of course, Malaysian islands are sort of closest to Malaysian, in general. The Philippine islands are sort of closest to Philippine. The Vietnam islands are kind of closest to Philippine. And the ones that China has had, no dispute over are closest to China. So suddenly, the dispute is over all these other islands that are primarily been undisputed for many years because they're closest to Vietnam, Philippines and Malaysia. And so again, if you don't see the strings being, why is China suddenly ready to go to war over these islands? Unless one of two things: their strings are being pulled, or more likely, they've put the world in a situation where China realizes it's a do or die. They have to go seize that resource while they see the machinations that we don't see, that the things in the paper don't point out, and that they're going to be dead if they don't. And that's the only reason they would do something like that, in my opinion. You don't just make these moves that set you up to be the bad guy and to be destroyed by the superior power, to bring the world to war, unless somebody wants to go to war. And you don't get people to go put their lives on the line for war unless they feel like they have to. Okay, so anyway, Business Insider, China's on the hot seat on two major foreign policy issues. And of course, those are the American THAAD system in South Korea. China's, pointing out what a total provocation that is now. Now they're in all this time, they obviously haven't felt that way. But now that we have this lunatic in North Korea, the lone gunman psychotic despot scenario, we have to deploy more advanced weapons, which now puts China in a worse situation. That, and of course, the disputed South China Sea waters, which the wag the dog world, the disputed waters, week in and week out now, till they can cause some sort of military action down there. Nobody pointing out that these haven't been disputed for a long time, that if we're going to bring the world together into economic unity, the last thing we need to do is be sending more and more military to these disputed waters over a few things that we've managed to work out all these years. Let's not go military on this. That's not going to help anybody's economic platform in the coming year. But no, it's military first. All right, so on the ground with the Peshmerga preparing to retake Mosul, and that's part of my fall of ISIS this week, is that the articles are showing us how close we're getting to get rid of these guys. And I thought this one was kind of interesting in that they pointed out that we're basically over there training at 3 different locations in northern Iraq. The United States and coalition forces from 7 nations are training nearly 2,500 Peshmerga soldiers in infantry tactics, heavy weapons training, as well as medical and chemical training. Wow, I feel 2,500, huh? Boy, it's a good thing they don't have to face the combined marching band total in Southern California, right? The college marching band of Southern California is probably 15 or 20,000. So it's a good thing. I mean, and with their trombones alone, they could probably beat the crap out of 2,500 Peshmerga troops. But, is that something? You mean all this time the world's been terrorized? We've allowed 11 million Syrians to be displaced from their homes when what we're really facing is a few thousand troops to get this done? You mean you couldn't sort of reorganize some of those 11 million that were fleeing their homes and saying, hey guys, wait a minute, don't flee. How many of you want to be part of the coalition to get your country back? I don't know. None of it makes any sense to me, you guys. We're holding drills in South Korea right now because the newest lone gunman, psychotic despot, 30-year-old kid is threatening the whole world. Of course, nobody can take him out. Nobody. China's Secret Service, Russia's Secret Service, nobody can take him out for the benefit of the whole world. No, sorry. James Bond don't live in this world. No, we just got to wait to see if that guy's going to launch his missiles. All we can do, best we can do, is send 15,000 troops to go on a drill on his border and send some more high-tech gear over. That's the best we can do. We can't send 15,000 troops over to Mosul to go kick ISIS's ass a year ago and get this thing over with. So anyway, 2,500 Peshmerga troops, that ought to do it. I'm so glad. I'm glad we finally figured that out. Because I remember a year ago it was, what are we going to do? Oh, ISIS, we just can't keep up with we just don't know what they're going to do next. We just can't keep up with them. Now we know what to do. 7 nations over there spending a fortune. Let's train 2,500 troops. Send them in. We'll get these guys. Fight for Syria's Aleppo exposes limits of Russian air power. I think this article was mostly to show Russia and Iran participating now in the fight against Syria more than anything else. I'm going to fly through these last few articles because I'm really trying to keep this this show to a minimum. Here are the disturbing reasons ISIS marketing is so effective, right? And you should read this one because it'll really make you laugh. This is from the August 27th. It's a Yahoo Finance article. Why ISIS marketing is so effective. It's great in a war where we're all afraid of their terrorism. They just seem to have unlimited access to the airwaves. They get all the, they know how to do it. They know how to get to their crowd. We can't, Soros, nobody can even buy up the channels that they might go on and say, I'll give you 10 times as much not to air their stuff. Apparently they have so many friends in the world, but nobody wants to join them. But all the media wants to air their stuff. ISIS aggressively promotes the attacks it directs, supports, or inspires. The extremist group recently took credit for attacks in Orlando and Brussels, reinforcing its image of being unstoppable and legitimate network. Okay, you guys? Oh, I'm sorry. Did these guys not get the message? Orlando and Brussels have been sort of widely hailed as a hoax. They've been demonstrated, in fact, as a verifiable beyond a reasonable doubt hoax. Hoaxes claimed by ISIS. Why are we still... What journalist is this reporting that that's part of what reinforces their image as an unstoppable and legitimate network? They're a hoax. They're a cartoon. They're a mercenary army working for NATO. That's what they are. NATO, speaking of NATO, must act to halt Turkey's freefall into Putin's arms. I think all this, again, is just scare tactic right now. It's all the prelude to World War III. It's got nothing to do with coming up lately, but it's going to keep playing this card that's been played with this coup attempt and the Mulan in America that we're supporting, and yet all the NATO importance that Turkey carries, and yet Russia now being NATO's new ally, and yet they have problems. Russia still got sanctions on NATO because they shot down an airliner. So it's just a menage a trois to keep everybody guessing. And as I say, it keeps Turkey being a wild card that can play in at the end, but I say it's no real importance now, except it's part of the seeds of the future problem. EU hits Apple with $14.5 billion Irish tax demand. So I guess the Europeans are a little pissed off for having all their money stolen in 2008 with the bank scandals that was meant to break the EU, and now the breakup of the EU with the European Union, Brexit, which I believe is all part of the breaking up of the EU and the tearing down of the unity on purpose that was always planned to be this way. It was always planned to undermine European sovereignty and strength by first bringing them together, just like a Federal Reserve System, get the money on fiat money, print enough of it to where the money's worthless, crash the economy, take up, all the assets now. Nobody's got any resistance power. So I think that's what's been going on, and I think Europe's kind of pissed. So they're telling Apple, hitting out, and whether, again, this is all hype or whatever, but it says to me somebody's over there saying, damn it, what can we do to hit back? Let's sue Apple for $14.5 billion. Makes for good headlines anyway. And this headline, banks are preparing for an economic nuclear winter. Funny that the only thing in this Yahoo Finance article is that headline and one line. It leads to a read more, but I'm just going to read you the line that comes with it. The current uncertainty over when the UK will start the process of quitting the European Union has banks on tenterhooks. So as I've been saying for weeks now, it occurs to me that the Brexit and all that is not a gain for any freedom of expression, and it's not a blow to the Soroses and the bankers of the world. it's right on schedule to divide Europe, to break Europe, to prepare Europe to become a country at each other's throats. They're already being told to store up goods for 10 days for disasters and terrorist attacks. And then the last one I thought was interesting here with Iranian attack boat swarm U.S. destroyer. That, of course, has been big in the news, and so I won't waste any time except to point out Iran being made the villain. And, you know, this whole, it reeks of every way that we start our wars, right? Boats are attacked. It's always boats that are being attacked. These little boats of Iran, it says they're carrying torpedoes. I mean, you know, when you watch torpedoes launch, think how big and heavy those look. Do these little things really look like they could be, I mean, they could have like surface-to-air missiles, you know, that's easy to think. But torpedoes, you know, they've got torpedoes that can take out big boats, and they're not worried about those gunships being able to take them out. You know, with all of our high-tech, early warning, not only could we probably take the torpedo out before it gets to the boat, but then zap that boat. And the reason I kept this, because this last line in this, I thought was really interesting, and it's part of what I'm going to talk about this week in a couple of things, I hope, with our insights with what's trending now in 2016. The U.S. Navy is researching ways to counter Iran's asymmetrical advantages. Of course, Iran has the advantages over the U.S. The people with no nuclear power, the people with, you know, what kind of military budget compared to ours, they have the asymmetrical advantages because they can dart about in their little boats that can drop missiles and torpedoes on our big boats. One promising solution: laser weapons. And, unsurprisingly, the first U.S. ship to carry such an experimental technology is currently stationed in the Persian Gulf. So you don't think they're just begging Iran to give them an excuse to zap them with a laser weapon, provoking Iran to bring these boats out there. Anyway, that's my take on it, and thanks for sticking with us. That's World War III this week. Talk to you again next week.